Alright. Cold out here. Damn. Ugh. Anyway. Jeez. It really is kind of chilly. Anyway, I was thinking a couple of different subjects. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about physics, and so a side subject came up that got me thinking about that, and then that got me thinking about consciousness. So who knows where this video will go. So anyway, the word fractal came up. Somebody mentioned in the comments about biology. And I had actually had a conversation with somebody not on YouTube anymore. Smart person. Yeah, smart people know to get away. Anyway, and we're talking about physics, and so I was explaining my theory. And, the little circle-y thing. The loops. Anyway, and so we're just getting to this basic idea of just quanta, the universe made up of. And the idea of me having to create a mechanism for this entanglement thing, where I was sort of arguing that electrons are basically photons caught in a spiral. And I'd have to explain, how they're not explicitly interlocked. So I just did that by, just recreating the idea of an attraction force that went 2 Planck constants ahead. Well, I don't want to get into a whole complex thing. But I just did that there would be a force of attraction that would just extend a little bit further than the thing being attracted, obviously. And that, so this ends up creating a first cause in terms of creating relationship between two things. Instead of things being actually connected to one another, they interact with one another. And so just that thought of how there's a kind of geometry to that. There's a kind of, it ends up being, when you're chasing this first cause idea. And it's just very fractal-ish in the sense that it's just a larger version, just an incrementally same pattern, just made bigger and bigger and bigger and built on itself. So it's kind of like a diamond. You take 4 diamonds and you can create a diamond, and then you take 16 diamonds, create a diamond, and so it just incrementally can grow. So that's the simplest form of a fractal, and just by adding a little change in the math, a little random generator through numbers, you can change the patterns and the arrangements and create complex patterns under complex patterns under complex patterns, blah blah blah. But it's all about this first mechanism, the first bit of gravity. And so I was kind of arguing that what it appears to be is that it is all made out of this simple stuff, just on larger and larger scales. And it all comes down to this recurring themes of, attraction and repulsion, that in a sense, when you get down to the core of it, it is probably going to be some sort of magnetic kind of syndrome, I guess I would argue. Because if I take my argument that, a photon would be a length of quantas that are all tied to each other end to end, plus to minus, like little magnets, and that in nuclear forces what happens is the photon chases itself, and so it starts to go the speed of light in a circle. And this is the building block of what we might call the strong nuclear force, is because now you have to break the quanta. You have to break one of those bonds to release the string to go in its whatever direction it wanted to go in, or wanted that it was oriented to go in. But that simple relationship, that simple idea of something linear having directionality, something that has an end point, and just the idea that you take the beginning point and the end point and connect them, and now you've disengaged all its movement. It doesn't have any anymore. Man, it really is cold. Shit, I'm way under dressed for the weather. catch pneumonia or something. I'll just have to be a man. Take it. Yeah. I'm gonna be all goosebumpy. Maybe the sun will come out and see now. Doesn't look like it. All gray. Shit. I'm really not in the mood for this winter stuff. What the hell is that pile of leaves doing there? Anyway, something covering its dead or whatever. Alright, so anyway, so how'd this get me onto consciousness? Alright, yeah, so the idea, somebody was dragging something through here, see? Yeah, I knew there was something going on. What the hell is that about? What the hell is that about? What the hell is that about? I don't know. Anyway, body? Yeah, dead body somewhere in there, dragged in there. Anyway, maybe so. I'll have to investigate. Later. Looks like a tire track over here too. Looks like something was dragged here too. Yeah. So they parked their car there, dragged the body here, and then into the woods. Yeah. Yep, solved the crime. Okay, anyway. Where was I? Oh, freezing. Shit. Yeah, it's always something to interrupt me in my video production. Alright, where was I? Fractals. Consciousness. Yeah, so anyway, I was in the conversation, you know, and as I was having the conversation, you know, I was they put the thing to you, like, well, what about? And then your brain has to answer the question. And it's just, you know, you sit there almost in amazement that your brain comes up with an answer. I mean, I didn't know I had an answer to the question. I had no, and I did. And it just surprised me when I started answering the question like I already knew the answer. Like, and it was like, whew, because the fact is I hadn't thought about it, you know, it had never entered consciousness. I had no memory of it, but it was there all the time. So it's like, you know, our brain does have a whole bunch of stuff that it hasn't stored in memory because we've never exposed that stuff. We've never been challenged to provide that piece of ourselves, so to speak. You know, that part of even our personality, our understanding has never been required to be used, but it was there. I mean, I'm saying it was there in the sense that it sort of had to be there because my brain came up with it so quickly. So it had to be something already in the modeling it was doing, you know, in the logical patterns it was putting together. It had already put it together, and it just hadn't arisen to a place where it's going to be stored as a duplicate, as a place in memory. And so that's another part of consciousness that really hasn't been discussed, is the idea that, you know, what's happening to you, the only way things get into your real memory is they kind of have to go through your consciousness to get into memory. They have to, you know, flow through the consciousness. Your consciousness, there's a record of your consciousness, and perhaps there isn't a record of the things beneath your consciousness. Or if there is, those two are functioning independently of each other. The unconscious memory is a different memory than the conscious memory. So anyway, it was just very interesting that you know, I apparently had already you know, thought of something I hadn't realized I thought of, so to speak, because I never thought of it consciously. It never leaked into my internal dialogue, and so I didn't know it was there, but it was. So anyway, and so you know, just a curiosity to add to the whole thing. So let's see if I came up with anything else or anything new or interesting. I'm really liking the idea of, extending the, instead of the typical model of the atom. So yeah, we'll do a little physics. Instead of the typical model where the orbitals are around a nucleus, I'm liking the idea of the orbitals being interconnected rings. So you could argue the first ring is the nucleus. It's probably something else, but let's just call it that. And then these electron rings, which are photons chasing each other sideways, but in a spiral. So they're in a spiraling motion. And so how wide or how narrow the spiral dictates how fast the electron moves. And then they get trapped in this, chase your tail thing inside the ring of the nucleus. So this ring of the nucleus, and the chase your tail thing hooks into that ring. And then that's the orbital. And then the next orbital hooks into that ring. And now you have this wider orbital. And then the next orbital hooks into that ring. And it's a wider orbital. And I was thinking about what the implications would be that in terms of length restraints. And the idea that, you end up with more and more electrons, more and more loops getting caught in these orbitals that are further and further out. So I don't really have an answer for the number thing. But the idea of, the fact that once you go out further, something would have to move faster, that you change speed as you go further out. And that this would cause, arrangement problems inside the atom, theoretically, just in this argument that you can't move even a photon faster than the speed of light. And if the electrons are made out of photons, they have to be in arrangements to have movement and orbits and all this stuff. But it would create the instability of the outer orbits, would be created by the fact that they're constantly having to change arrangement to be able to maintain their integrity in terms of their speed of light problem. And if they're doing some other movement in some other direction, they would have to be constantly rearranged, and that's what makes their bond weak. So, and that's why they're radioactive, and they're always spontaneously breaking down. Not spontaneously, but they break down, is because of that degrade. But that's all, that needs a lot of work. That's double draft, but the interlocking orbits, instead of the orbits like the traditional solar system orbits, I'm thinking there's no mathematical reason why I can't change that, and I don't think there's any evidentiary reason why I can't change that model. They do have what they call the tunneling microscope, and they claim to have imagery of atoms, but those are synthetic images. So those are already based on what they've programmed the computer to interpret the data as. So they've already put a bias into the machinery in terms of creating that image of an atom. And I don't think that is overcomable as the fact that that's a reflection of a contrived image, not a real image, a constructed image based on a model. And if you just change the model, you change the image, because the raw data isn't coherent to what they're projecting it into. It's like when they have pictures of the universe, and they add color and do a lot of stuff to enhance the image, and those enhancements are more about human taste, human preference, than anything real in the data. So anyway, all right, this is, you know, a video for people desperate to watch a video. Yeah, I mean, the consciousness bit was sort of interesting. So, you know, that's probably worth a whole video, just going through the idea of, you know, what the idea of what memory does and its function in our, and how we function, and the fact that the reoccurring themes are the ones that become the dominant themes, you know, the ones that keep sliding into focus because of their connection to other words, you know, and how that probably is part of what builds the hierarchy, and you know, the carry your character out of those themes of you know, how you associate words. And so simple word associations could have, you know, more to do with your integrity than you know, the integrity of the concepts themselves. Well, not too bad. I always thought there'd be more leaves. Not too bad. Color's good, but it's so cloudy still. Anyway, it's gonna be cold. Don't know if I'm brave enough today. It's really cold out here. Wet and cold would be bad. But I'm the kind of person that yeah, while it's still there, I'm going to use it. Anyway, I hate giving up on summer. Hate it. It's all screwed up. Really late season lilies. Really late. Kind of interesting shape too. Very funnily. So anyway, until next time and such.